You are sitting in a room right now. Someone is talking with full confidence about something they completely misunderstand. Your brain already knows the answer. You have the facts ready. But something inside you says stop. That silence is not weakness. That silence is the most powerful thing you have ever done. Most people think that smart people stay quiet because they are shy or they are afraid. That is wrong. Smart people go silent because they have learned something painful and real. They have learned that explaining the truth to someone who does not want it is not kindness. It is a waste. And today we are going to talk about exactly why that happens and what it means for your life. Arthur Schopenhauer was a German philosopher who lived in the 1800s. He was not a friendly man. He was not interested in being popular. He was interested in the truth. And the truth he discovered about human nature was so dark and so real that universities ignored him for most of his life. But today, millions of people are reading his words because what he said about stupid people and smart people is more accurate than anything modern psychology has produced. Schopenhauer said something very simple. He said that most people do not argue to find the truth. They argue to feel powerful. They argue to protect their ego. They argue because losing a debate feels like dying inside. And when you understand this, you will never be frustrated by a stupid argument again. Here is the first thing you need to understand about silence. When a smart person goes quiet in a conversation, it is not because they lost. It is because they ran a calculation inside their head faster than you can blink, and the answer came back negative. The cost of speaking is higher than the return. The energy required to explain something to someone who will not accept it is greater than the energy required to build something new in complete silence. Daniel Kahneman wrote about two systems of thinking. System 1 is fast and emotional. It reacts before it thinks. It forms opinions based on feeling and calls those feelings facts. System 2 is slow and logical. It weighs evidence. It asks questions. It tolerates the discomfort of not knowing something yet. The problem is that most people only use System 1. They feel something and they believe it. They hear something that matches what they already think and they accept it as proof. They hear something that challenges what they believe and they reject it as an attack. There is no reasoning happening. There is only defending. When a smart person tries to have a real conversation with a System 1 person, they are not communicating. They are performing surgery on someone who keeps waking up mid-operation and insisting there is nothing wrong with them. The smart person eventually puts down the tools, not because they give up on the patient, because they realize the patient is not actually asking to be healed. Now here is where it gets darker. The Dunning-Kruger effect is one of the most important discoveries in modern psychology. In 1999, David Dunning and Justin Kruger published research that revealed something terrifying about human intelligence. The people who know the least are the most confident, and the reason for this is not stupidity in the simple sense. The reason is that the mental skills required to recognize your own ignorance are the exact same skills you develop by actually learning things. In other words, you have to be smart enough to know you are not smart enough. The person with low knowledge does not feel gaps. Their ignorance does not feel like ignorance to them. It feels like settled ground, it feels like certainty. And when you arrive with evidence and logic and try to show them the gap, they feel it as a threat, not as information. Their ego does not say, "Oh, interesting, I should update my belief." Their ego says, "This person is trying to make me feel small and I will not allow it." This is why arguing with ignorance is so different from arguing with someone who is simply wrong. A wrong person can be corrected. They have the internal architecture to receive new information and adjust. An ignorant person is not wrong in a correctable way. They are operating from a completely different map of reality, and on their map they have already arrived. You cannot argue someone to a destination they do not believe exists. Schopenhauer understood this 2 centuries before the psychology research confirmed it. He watched brilliant men in academic debates get destroyed not because their arguments were weaker, but because they made one fatal assumption. They assumed the other person was playing the same game. They assumed both sides wanted to find the truth together. Schopenhauer looked at the same scene and saw something completely different. He saw one person trying to learn and another person trying to win. And in that situation, the person trying to win has a massive advantage because they are willing to use tactics that the person trying to learn would consider dishonest. So Schopenhauer developed strategies, not strategies for winning debates, strategies for surviving them without losing your mind or your energy. One of his most powerful strategies was this: do not fight the wrong idea. Agree with it completely and then follow it to its natural conclusion. If someone tells you that hard work alone is all you need to become rich, then agree. Tell them that means every poor person in the world is simply lazy. Watch what happens. They will suddenly start adding conditions. They will inject nuance. They will begin arguing against their own original position to avoid the conclusion of their own logic. You did not defeat them with superior knowledge. You defeated them with a mirror. This strategy works because stupid arguments are built on shallow foundations. They sound strong at the surface, but they collapse immediately when you push them 3 steps forward. The smart person does not argue against the foundation. They just keep walking in the direction the argument is pointing until the flaw disappears. But here is what is more important than any strategy. The reason smart people go silent is not just tactical, it is protective. Your mind is not invincible. Your thinking is not immune to its environment. Schopenhauer believed this deeply, and modern cognitive science confirms it. When you spend extended time navigating the irrational and chaotic thinking of a foolish person, your brain works overtime. You are predicting their unpredictable reactions. You are suppressing your frustration. You are trying to translate complex reality into simple enough language that they might grasp it. All of this burns cognitive fuel at a rate that has real consequences. You leave those conversations depleted, not just tired. Your decision-making is slower. Your creative thinking is dimmer. Your patience for meaningful problems is thinner. You have been drained not by someone smarter than you, by someone more resistant than you. They outlasted you not by winning, but by being willing to be wrong indefinitely. Schopenhauer was famous for his solitude. People called him antisocial, but he did not avoid people because he hated them. He avoided certain kinds of people because he understood that the mind becomes what it spends time around. A mind that spends its days in low-quality conversations becomes a low-quality mind, not all at once, slowly. The way a sharp blade becomes dull, not from one hard impact, but from 1,000 careless uses. The smart person who goes quiet is not just protecting their time. They are protecting the quality of their thinking itself. They are refusing to let the noise outside become the noise inside. There is a specific situation that brings this principle into its sharpest focus. What happens when the foolish person has power over you? This is not a theoretical problem. This is Tuesday. This is the manager who has the wrong idea and the authority to make everyone follow it. This is the client who is confidently incorrect and holds the budget. This is the person whose approval you need to move forward and whose understanding of what you are building is almost entirely wrong. Schopenhauer was very clear about this dynamic. He wrote that displaying superior intelligence in the presence of mediocrity is not just ineffective. It is genuinely dangerous, because the mediocre mind in a position of power does not see your capability as a contribution. They see it as a challenge to their status. They feel the gap between you and them even if they cannot name it. And a threatened person with authority does not become curious. They become procedural. They find ways to slow you down. They call you arrogant or difficult or not collaborative. They use the systems they control to make your life harder, without ever once admitting that the real issue is that you made them feel small. You cannot out-argue a person like this. You cannot debate your way to freedom inside a structure they control. You can only outmaneuver them. You can only give their ego exactly enough to stay satisfied while you continue building the thing they will eventually benefit from without ever understanding how it was made. The silence in this situation is not defeat. It is the most sophisticated form of intelligence available in that room. Now, here is the part of this conversation that most self-improvement content refuses to go to. The reason smart people struggle so much with staying silent is not because they do not understand the logic of it. They understand it perfectly. The reason they keep talking is because they are addicted to being right. Not right in a quiet, personal way. Write in a witnessed way. Write in a way that someone else acknowledges. Write in a way that produces a visible concession from the other person. And Schopenhauer would tell you that this need for visible validation from a foolish person is itself a form of foolishness. Why do you need a person who cannot see the depth of your thinking to confirm that your thinking is deep? Why does their acknowledgement carry weight with you? Why have you handed the evaluation of your intelligence to someone whose own intelligence you have already assessed as insufficient for the task? This is the real trap. Not that the fool defeats you in the argument, that you have given them the power to decide whether you win. The moment you stop needing them to agree, the dynamic changes completely. Their wrong opinion becomes information about them, not a verdict about you. Their refusal to understand becomes evidence of the gap between you, not a failure of your explanation. You watch the exchange with the detachment of someone reading a case study, present but not invested, observing but not affected. This level of detachment is not coldness. It is the final form of the intelligence that has been protecting itself all along. Schopenhauer spent the last decades of his life largely alone. He was not bitter, he was clear. He had stopped spending energy trying to be understood by people who lacked the capacity to understand him, and had used that energy to write some of the most precise observations about human nature ever recorded. His work sat unread for decades. Then it found the readers it was waiting for. The silence he kept was not resignation. It was patience operating at a scale most people cannot imagine. He was not waiting for the room to understand him. He was building something the room would eventually need. This is the final thing to understand about why smart people go quiet. The silence is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of the real work. The arguments that smart people choose not to have are the arguments that do not build anything. The conversations they choose not to enter are the conversations that lead nowhere. And all the energy they conserve by staying quiet is energy that goes somewhere else. Into something real. Into something that does not require the approval of the room to exist. You can spend your life explaining yourself to people who will not listen. Or you can spend it building something they will one day look at and not understand how it got made. Schopenhauer chose to build. The silence was how he paid for it.